convincing you that you are always just one step away from losing what God has already secured. You find yourself running after opportunities, chasing approval, and fighting battles that were never assigned to you in the first place. Deep down, you know there is more, but the pressure of performance keeps you restless. You think if you don't push, it won't happen. If you don't fight, you'll lose everything. But the truth is, you're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from it. What has been promised over your life has already been declared finished. The problem is not whether God will deliver. It's whether you can stop wrestling long enough to believe him. There is a difference between working in alignment with God and striving in desperation. Alignment is powerful. It means you are moving with divine direction, doing what he called you to do, and trusting him to handle the outcome. Striving, on the other hand, is fueled by fear. It is the desperate attempt to force doors open, to prove your worth, to manipulate timing. And no matter how hard you push, the door that God has already unlocked doesn't require all that. It only requires your trust. You're wearing yourself out in battles that don't even belong to you because somewhere along the way, you believe the lie that it's all on your shoulders. When God marks something as yours, there isn't a devil in hell strong enough to snatch it away. Think about it. If he called you, no one can cancel you. If he opened the door, no one can shut it. If he blessed you, no one can curse it. So why are you still exhausting yourself trying to secure what heaven has already sealed? Stress is not proof of commitment. Worry is not a sign of faithfulness. When you finally understand that what belongs to you cannot miss you, your spirit can breathe again. You don't have to fight to prove something that God already stamped as yours. Every time you chase after what's already been given, you place yourself in a cycle of unnecessary struggle. And struggle has a way of distracting you from purpose. You become so focused on running after blessings that you forget the blesser. You're so busy trying to hold it all together that you don't notice God already did the heavy lifting. You think peace will come after the promotion, after the relationship, after the breakthrough. But peace doesn't show up when the blessing comes. It shows up when you finally believe the blessing was always yours. That's the power of resting in God's promises. Understand this, you are not being lazy when you stop chasing. You are being faithful. Faith looks like standing still when the world tells you to run faster. Faith looks like trusting that if God already unlocked the door, it's going to swing open in his timing, not yours. The people around you may not understand why you've stopped striving. They may call it weakness or lack of ambition. But real strength is choosing to wait on God rather than wear yourself out trying to play God. The door that is yours cannot be taken, delayed, or denied. It will meet you right where you are. So the next time you feel yourself running after what God already gave you, pause and remember victory is already in your hands. Stop wrestling, stop striving, stop exhausting yourself for something that heaven already decreed as yours. The battle you're trying to fight doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Lord. And the moment you let go, you step into the peace that was waiting for you all along. Somewhere along the way, culture taught us that worry equals responsibility. That if you aren't anxious, you aren't really working. That if you aren't carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, then maybe you don't care enough. But that is a lie. Anxiety was never part of your assignment. Stress was never written into your destiny. Fear was never designed to sit in the driver's seat of your life. You've been tricked into believing that panic is the price you pay for progress. But the truth is, God never asked you to carry that weight. He asked you to walk in peace and let him handle what you cannot control. Anxiety robs you in ways that go beyond your emotions. It drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and locks you in a cycle of self-doubt. You rehearse conversations that never happened, play out failures that haven't even occurred, and wake up tired from battles you only fought in your mind. That is not living. That is surviving. And you were not created just to survive. You were created to live in fullness, joy, and freedom. Anxiety convinces you that the worst case scenario is inevitable, but faith dares you to believe in the best case outcome that God already promised. The dangerous thing about anxiety is that it disguises itself as responsibility. You tell yourself, I'm just being careful. I'm just being realistic. I'm just planning ahead. But beneath those words is fear wearing a mask. Fear of failing, fear of being rejected, fear of losing control. And the more you feed that fear, the more it grows until it consumes every decision you make. Anxiety is not wisdom, it's torment. Wisdom leads to clarity, but anxiety leads to chaos. Wisdom produces strategy, but anxiety produces sleepless nights. Wisdom comes from God, but anxiety is rooted in fear, and fear never comes from Him. If you're honest, much of your anxiety comes from trying to control what isn't in your hands. You stress over outcomes you can't predict, people you can't change, and futures you can't see. That's why God calls you to cast your cares on Him. Not some of them, all of them, because as long as you're holding on to them, they will weigh you down. But the moment you release them, you free yourself to step into peace. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to carry. That's when the burden lifts. That's when the storm in your mind begins to calm. Peace is not something you have to chase. It's something you already have access to. But to walk in it, you must stop feeding anxiety with your focus. Every time you give more attention to your fears than to your faith, you starve your peace. Peace is your inheritance. But anxiety tricks you into forfeiting it. And the enemy knows if he can keep you anxious, he can keep you distracted. He doesn't even have to destroy you. He just has to keep you restless long enough to prevent you from stepping into your assignment. That's why you cannot afford to normalize anxiety as part of your life. The next time anxiety tries to creep in, remind yourself this is not my assignment. This panic does not belong to me. I don't have to live with the constant weight of, what if? I don't have to rehearse the same fears over and over. My role is not to worry my way into the promise, but to trust my way into it. Anxiety cannot produce what only faith can unlock. Stress cannot give you what only surrender can release. And fear cannot build what only peace can sustain. You were never called to live in torment. You were called to live in trust. We live in a culture that worships speed. Everything is on demand. Food delivered in minutes, packages arriving the same day, information at the click of a button. And somewhere in the middle of this obsession with instant gratification, we convinced ourselves that God should operate on our timetable too. But destiny doesn't bow to deadlines. Purpose doesn't submit to pressure. Timing in the kingdom of heaven is not rushed. It is strategic. God's delay is not His denial. It is His preparation. Every moment you think is wasted is actually working together to align the pieces for your breakthrough. The hardest part about divine timing is waiting without understanding. You pray, you plan, you position yourself, and still the door does not open when you expect it. That's when frustration creeps in. You wonder if God heard you, if He forgot you, or if you missed your chance. But silence is not abandonment, it's alignment. God is orchestrating something bigger than what you see. The reason it hasn't happened yet is not because He doesn't care, but because He cares too much to give it to you before you're ready. He loves you too deeply to hand you a blessing that will crush you instead of grow you. Sometimes the delay is about development. It's about shaping your character, stretching your faith, and sharpening your vision. You may think you're prepared, but God knows the weight of what He's about to place in your hands. You think you're ready to lead, but He's teaching you how to serve. You think you're ready for the platform, but He's building your foundation. Because what good is a blessing if you don't have the capacity to carry it? Timing protects you from receiving too little too soon or too much too early. The waiting season is not punishment, it's training. Think about the seasons of nature. Winter always feels long, cold, and endless. But beneath the surface, the soil is being prepared. Roots are stretching deeper, trees are conserving strength, and the earth is getting ready to bloom. You don't see the growth, but it's happening in silence. In the same way, When it looks like nothing is moving in your life, God is working beneath the surface. He is planting strength in your spirit, deepening your roots, and preparing you for the harvest that will come at the right time. If you force it out of season, it will wither, but if you wait, it will flourish. When the timing finally comes, you won't have to question it. The blessing will not trickle in, it will overflow. Opportunities will align so perfectly that you'll know it was not your effort, but God's orchestration. People will come into your life at the exact moment you need them. Doors will open that you couldn't have forced if you tried. And you'll look back and realize if it had come any earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. Timing doesn't just deliver blessings, it delivers clarity. It shows you why the waiting was worth it. So stop letting impatience rob you of peace. Stop comparing your timeline to someone else's highlight reel. Their season is not your season. Their breakthrough is not your breakthrough. You don't need what they have. You need what God has set aside for you. Trust that every delay has a divine purpose. Trust that every closed door is protecting you. Trust that when the timing is right, what you've been waiting for won't just arrive. It will arrive in abundance, in power, and in perfect alignment with the purpose you were created to fulfill. Control is one of the hardest things to let go of because it gives us the illusion of safety. We believe if we can just manage every detail, predict every outcome, and anticipate every move, then somehow we can guarantee success. But control is not security. It is a counterfeit comfort. The more you try to control everything, the more you realize how little power you actually have. That realization either drives you deeper into frustration or pushes you towards surrender. God never asked you to carry the weight of managing what only his hands can hold. The tighter you grip, the more exhausted you become because you're trying to play a role that doesn't belong to you. There are things in your life you will never be able to fix. No matter how much energy you pour into them, you can't force people to change. You can't manipulate opportunities into existence. You can't twist circumstances until they bend in your favor. The moment you recognize that, you are free. Free from the pressure of trying to be everyone's savior. Free from the stress of controlling outcomes that belong to God alone. You were never created to orchestrate every detail. You were created to trust the one who already wrote the story. And the sooner you release that control, the sooner you make room for God's power to move on your behalf. The danger of control is that it blinds you to possibility. When you're so fixated on making things go your way, you miss the greater way God is preparing. You're so focused on forcing open one door that you don't notice the better door he already unlocked. You're so busy trying to hold someone in your life that you can't see the people he is bringing to replace what you've been losing. Control shrinks your vision, but surrender expands it. When you let go of your limited plan, you step into his limitless one. And his plan always exceeds your imagination. There is a power that only shows up after you surrender. As long as you're trying to force it, manipulate it, or worry it into existence, you block what God is trying to release. But the moment you let go, that's when miracles happen. That's when favor flows. That's when doors open with such ease, you'll know it wasn't you, it was him. One act of surrender can shift what a lifetime of striving could never achieve. Control says, I have to make it happen. Faith says, God already made a way. And when you truly believe that, you stop striving and start resting. Think about what happens when you let go of a heavy load you've been carrying for too long. Your body feels lighter. Your steps feel freer. You can finally breathe again. That's what happens in your spirit when you release control. The burden lifts. The pressure breaks. The weight that was crushing you suddenly falls away. And in that space, peace takes root. You begin to see that your life was never meant to be built on your own strength, but on his faithfulness. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that your power has limits, but his has none. When you release control, you create the space for God to prove himself faithful. You make room for his supernatural power to fill the gaps your effort could never cover. What he can do in one moment of favor will outweigh everything you could grind for in a lifetime. But he won't compete with your grip. If your hands are full of fear, manipulation, and striving, they are too full to receive his blessing. That's why surrender is not optional, it's necessary. Until you let go, you cannot step into the fullness of what he has prepared for you. Rest is one of the most misunderstood concepts in faith. Too often people confuse rest with laziness, inactivity, or lack of ambition. But true rest is none of those things. Rest is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing with the right posture. Rest says, I don't have to prove myself to be worthy. I don't have to chase after what's already mine. I don't have to lose sleep trying to make things happen because I serve a God who never sleeps and never fails. Rest is a declaration that your trust is bigger than your fear, that your faith is stronger than your striving. It is a radical act because it resists everything the world teaches you about hustle, grind, and self-sufficiency. When you choose rest, you are actually engaging in spiritual warfare. The enemy wants to keep you restless, distracted, and drained because a restless spirit is an ineffective spirit. He wants you so tired that you can't hear God's voice, so consumed with doing that you forget how to be, and so focused on performing that you miss the presence of God altogether. But when you rest, you wage war against that strategy. You are saying, I refuse to let my peace be stolen. I refuse to let my joy be crushed. I refuse to live in exhaustion when God promised me abundance. Rest is not a retreat. It's a weapon that silences the lies of the enemy. Rest requires faith because it demands that you stop relying on your own strength. It forces you to believe that God is actually in control when you step back. It dares you to trust that while you are still, he is still working. It's easy to say you have faith when you're busy, when you're doing all the things, when your hands are constantly moving. But real faith is proven in your ability to stop worrying, to stop forcing, to stop running yourself into the ground, to stand still and know that he is God. That's where your strength is renewed. That's where your spirit is restored. That's where your soul finds peace. Choosing rest also redefines your identity because many of us have attached our worth to our productivity. We measure our value by how much we accomplish, how busy we are, and how much we can prove to others. But rest reminds you that you are valuable not because of what you do, but because of who you are in him. You are loved, chosen, and called whether you check off 100 tasks or none at all. Rest teaches you to separate your identity from your activity. It frees you from the pressure of constant performance and anchors you in the truth that your worth was established long before you ever lifted a finger. Another dimension of rest is trust in God's timing. When you rest, you are saying, I don't need to rush what God has already scheduled. I don't need to panic if it hasn't happened yet. I don't need to run ahead because what belongs to me will not miss me. Rest refuses to let impatience dictate decisions. Rest silences the noise of comparison that tells you you're behind. Rest plants you in the confidence that when the time is right, God will deliver everything he promised in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. It's not just about stopping activity. It's about aligning with divine timing. Rest also creates space for clarity. When your soul is at peace, you can hear God more clearly. When you are not drowning in stress, you are more open to revelation. When you stop striving, you start seeing. Rest sharpens your discernment, strengthens your focus, and deepens your intimacy with him. The noise of the world is loud, but rest quiets your spirit long enough to recognize his whisper. And it's often in that stillness that you receive the instructions, the vision, the wisdom that carry you into your next season. That's why rest isn't optional for people of faith. It's essential. Without it, you lose strength, direction, and perspective. With it, you gain the clarity and power to walk boldly into the fullness of what he has prepared. What you've been waiting for is not lost, it's not gone, and it's not hiding from you. It is already on its way. Too often we live with the pressure of chasing as though blessings are running away and we must sprint to catch them. But the truth is, when God assigns something to your life, it's programmed to find you. You don't need to run after it, beg for it, or manipulate your way into it. The assignment on your life has your name written across it, and no matter how far it seems, it is destined to intersect with your path at the exact moment God ordains. You may not see it yet, but just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's inactive. There are blessings chasing you right now, aligning in places you cannot see, moving through people you haven't met, being positioned in environments you haven't even stepped into. That's the mystery of divine orchestration. You think you're waiting, but really God is arranging. He is shifting circumstances, preparing opportunities, and aligning hearts so that what he promised shows up at the perfect time. When you finally encounter it, you'll realize it wasn't random. It was divine. Every delay, every detour, every closed door was guiding you toward this very moment. The promise has been in motion all along, and you were never forgotten. The beauty of this truth is that it silences the need for striving. Chasing after things creates exhaustion, but trusting they are chasing after you creates peace. You don't have to run yourself dry trying to make doors open. You don't have to force relationships that aren't meant to last. You don't have to manipulate circumstances to prove your worth. If it's from God, it will come to you. That doesn't mean you sit idle. It means you position yourself with readiness, faith, and obedience, but without the frantic energy of desperation. You show up prepared, but you don't have to beg. You align with purpose, and purpose does the rest. Think about how a magnet works. It doesn't chase after what it's meant to attract. It simply holds its position, and everything aligned with its nature comes to it. That's exactly how blessings work in your life. When you live in alignment with who God created you to be, when you stand in your identity and walk in obedience, the right things will be drawn to you. You won't have to compromise yourself, water down your values, or exhaust your soul. What is meant for you will be magnetized to you, not because of your striving, but because of your alignment. And what isn't meant for you will naturally fall away, no matter how hard you try to hold on. It's also important to remember that when the blessing arrives, it won't just meet your need, it will overflow. God doesn't operate in minimums, he operates in abundance. That's why he lets you wait, so when it comes, it doesn't come half-formed or incomplete. It arrives pressed down, shaken together, and running over. You've been praying for enough, but God has been preparing more than enough. You've been praying for survival, but he's been planning overflow. And when it finds you, you'll understand why it took the time it did, because quick fixes could never compare to divine fulfillment. So while you wait, you don't need to panic, you don't need to beg, and you don't need to chase. Your responsibility is to remain faithful, remain ready, and remain rooted. Because what God has for you is not running away, it's running toward you. Your destiny is not hiding, it's approaching. The opportunities, the breakthroughs, the relationships, the healing, the provision, they are all in motion. And when they show up, they won't just meet you halfway. They will collide with your life in such a way that you'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is what I was waiting for all along.